So with that, I want to introduce Tom Jurgens from NetApp, a key partner of ours, and he's going to come back later with Michael Phelps, but he's coming to the stage to give you an idea of what's coming in his area of the world. So let me welcome to the stage Tom.
Well, thank you, Charles. And thank you to Oracle for giving me the opportunity to talk this morning. So, why is storage interesting to this audience?
It's not.
And I guess I want to start with a few points. Number one is that everything we do, we're actually competing for corporate budget dollars. And in the world of IT, storage is probably the biggest single consumer of those IT dollars. So at the very least, even if storage is not interesting, I think the dollars that it consumes are. But I want to move beyond that. I want to talk about a number of key components here that we can do better than just reducing cost. And I want to give a presentation today, and I'm going to talk about what customers are achieving with our technology. I'm going to talk about how customers actually cut their storage costs in half. And as storage providers, we typically focus on mitigating bad things, lowering cost, reducing downtime, and those are all really important. But the other thing today is I'm going to talk about how companies actually improve their time to market and actually generate improved top lines for their company by virtue of the storage decisions that they make. So first, a little bit about NetApp. So NetApp finished its most recent fiscal year at the end of April at $3.3 billion. We completed a 5-year period where we had compound annual growth rate of 30%. And in our first fiscal quarter of this year, we actually generated 26% growth in a clearly very difficult environment. So NetApp has been number 2 in market share, in capacity shipped for a while now. And the first calendar quarter of this year, we actually passed IBM and HP to actually be number 2 in worldwide revenue shipped as well. And in addition to the financial measures, one other thing that's very important at NetApp is that NetApp for the last 6 years has actually been listed in Fortune's best places to work. And in the last 4 years has actually been in the top 25. So one of our beliefs as a company is that our culture is one of our sustaining strategic advantages. And it's this policy and this practice and competing for the Fortune's best places to work is how we benchmark ourselves against that goal. But what I really want to talk today about is real customer stories. What customers are achieving with our technology every single day that fundamentally changes the economics of their storage infrastructure, and at the same time, despite dramatically reducing costs, actually accelerating their business success. So I'll start with the problem statement, and it's a challenging one. So data continues to grow exponentially. And there's really 2 dimensions of that. Number 1 is new data created. New database transactions, new files that get created, new emails that get sent, images, etc. And that continues to grow. But in addition, in most major enterprises, it's not only the new copies of the data, it's all the subsequent copies that get made, whether it's for disaster recovery or backup, test and development, which I'll talk about in some detail, archival and compliance, decision support, data warehousing. It's not uncommon in major enterprises to actually have 25 copies of the primary copy of the data. And what I'll talk about today is ways to mitigate that. The other thing is that we take for granted today is that in this business, in the storage business, we need to have worldwide continued availability of our data on a 7 by 24 basis. That goes without saying. Even for applications that a few years back would not be considered to be mission critical, like email and collaboration. And then there's compliance and regulatory concerns. Probably all of our companies have some form of email policy. Typically, it's all emails get stored forever. There's the medical industry that has HIPAA regulations where patient records need to be maintained for 30 years beyond the life of the patient. So for a baby born today, that's 100 years. And then the financial services sector has all forms of regulation, such as they are. But then the big hitter are budget pressures. And the budget pressures come in several forms. There's budget pressures around acquisition costs, what it costs to actually buy this stuff. There are costs around what does it take to actually operate this, whether it be electrical costs or physical space. And then costs measured in time and people of what it takes to administer this stuff and keep it efficient and keep it reliable. And then another concern I hear a lot about is data centers are at their capacity. Basically, data centers either have no more physical space or no more electrical space for either power or cooling of the equipment. So therefore, to put something new in a data center requires taking something else out. Otherwise, the incremental cost of a server or storage, if it means building a bigger data center or moving a data center, is staggeringly expensive. And then the other one is green initiatives. It was great to hear about Oracle's green initiatives today around this conference. Virtually everywhere I go, corporate responsibility, social responsibility around green initiatives, particularly focused on the IT space, given the amount of greenhouse gases and power and cooling that this particular technology consumes. So a key point today that I want to bring up, that I will talk about in some detail, is that as daunting as those tasks look, there actually are technologies today to fundamentally change and significantly improve our ability to deal with those items. But another key point I want to make is not unlike lots of breakthrough innovation, and we've seen plenty of studies over the years, most of these new technologies are not being pioneered and they are not being promoted by the conventional vendors that we see in our databases, see in our data centers every day. And probably the best example of that, there was actually a recent blog activity around storage, a bunch of storage insiders. I won't dwell on the specifics. But one of the vendors took it upon themselves to actually do a comparison of storage efficiency of themselves and two other vendors. So NetApp was included in that comparison. I guess an honor in and of itself. And miraculously, the author's company finished in first place. Imagine our surprise. So what happened is all the other vendors, the other participants cried foul, ourselves included. They said the configurations weren't the same, and performance wasn't the same in the final configurations. One was more fault tolerant than the other. In the end, it's pretty safe to assume that no consensus was reached. Effectively, the author wasn't admit that he didn't win, and the other vendors weren't willing to admit that he did. However, something very, very interesting came out of that presentation. And that is, if you go back and look at the solution that was offered, the author basically declared victory at 70% storage efficiency. So what that means is that the purchasers of that equipment, 30% of that equipment is immediately unavailable because of fault tolerance and reserves and other types of techniques, and only the other 70 is available to users. But we really weren't measuring utilization, we were measuring maximum theoretical utilization. In real life, users of this technology typically see utilization rates of about half to two-thirds of that 70%, usually around 40 to 50% overall. And this is where the important point comes in, is that utilization methodology that was put out in this article was the way people measured utilization 10 years ago. And in fact, the entire analysis ignored about a half a decade's worth of innovation. And that's what I want to talk about. So I'll start with Oracle. Our Oracle was indeed one of those companies that had 40 to 50% utilization across their infrastructure. And Oracle proved to be one of the most aggressive adopters of this new technology. They've actually switched a substantial amount, in fact the overwhelming majority of their infrastructure, to NetApp across all types of environments, and I'll talk about those later. But the punchline here is that across all workloads, across the entire enterprise, across 700 machines, Oracle has an average utilization rate in excess of 90%. So moving from 40% to 90% just about cuts their storage costs in half. In addition, it generates 30% more usable storage than the admitted best-in-class performance of conventional architectures. In fact, a substantial amount of this infrastructure actually runs at over 100% utilization. It means that the users of these systems actually believe that they've stored more data and they've got immediate access to that data than the amount of physical storage the customer actually bought, including all the overhead for fault tolerance and reserves. So how is this possible? And I'll take us through a few technologies. So the first one is called thin provisioning. So what thin provisioning allows you to do is partially allocate your storage and pool the rest of it in one common pool. And then you incrementally and automatically dole it out on demand as your various different applications and volumes need it. So that's in contrast to prior techniques where basically the storage is allocated up front and you typically end up with substantial amounts of storage stranded on volumes that are not very active while you're potentially running out on others. And the net effect of that stranded, unusable storage lowers your effective utilization because you're still paying for it and you're still powering it. It also allows you to actually provision more storage than you actually have, so you don't have to buy excess storage at point of purchase. You can store what you have and buy future storage on demand as requirements dictate. So the example here I have is Siemens. Siemens is the largest industrial data center and SAP operator in Austria. They claim that they run an industrial strength data center and they offer full outsourcing services for mission critical applications. And not only do they serve Austria, but they actually serve the rapidly growing Eastern European market as well. And you can see what the quote says, that this is easy to use, it dramatically simplifies their provisioning, it dries up their utilization, and allows them to compete more effectively in a very, very challenging hosting business. So the next one I want to talk about is deduplication. So deduplication, simply put, looks through all of your data and looks for recurring patterns of data and stores them one time and squeezes out the rest. So for all of NetApp's growth throughout our history, this has proven to be the most rapidly adopted technology we've ever shipped. In about a year, we've got 15,000 machines running this technology at 3,000 customers. So NetApp today has the largest installed base of deduplication in the world. Now there is deduplication technology from other vendors. It's primarily targeted about backup. It's very, very effective. But what's unique about NetApp is that we support databases, file systems, VMware images, email, in addition to backup. In fact, in virtualized environments, it's not uncommon to see deduplication compress storage by more than 80%. As you see from the customer comments, this technology is simple and effective. Duke goes right to the point about how much storage they save every year. Virginia Credit Union talks about, since there's no impact on performance of this technology in their environment, they've actually deployed it widely in a whole range of applications. And then Dexma gets right to the bottom point, and that is that this technology has helped them improve their bottom line. So another technology, the last one I'll talk about in detail, is actually thin cloning. The NetApp brand name for this is Flex Clones. So what thin cloning allows you to do is create a logical copy of the data without actually duplicating the physical space. So imagine that you were able to create for every one of your developers and every one of your QA people their own apparent copy of a database to test and to develop their applications on. So this technology was developed in collaboration with Oracle. In fact, they help us co-develop it. And the stated goal is to increase the bandwidth of their own development organization and likewise improve the ability of their customers to bring applications online sooner. So last year's booth, we were demoing this. This was actually one of two technologies that pretty much captured people's imagination and were busy all day. So if I look at the Activision story, so Neil actually presented here last year and talked about the launch of Guitar Hero. So they deployed the solution for their test and development environment. And they actually took the time it took to create a test copy of a database from 4 days to 4 hours. In the past, they would only allow maybe 1 or 2 copies of the database for testing for any given project. Now they can give almost an unlimited number. In fact, they gave an example in that presentation of giving 12 copies of the database to one design team alone. In addition, they were able to move a clone to the training organization so that they could do in parallel the development and the training of their people at the same time. And the net effect of all of this is the use of this technology allowed them to bring their online services to market sooner than they expected, creating competitive advantage for Activision. And this technology is not only about test and development. We also see it in terms of decision support and data warehousing. We also see it in virtualized infrastructures. In virtual machines, typically in the Microsoft space, the operating system and the applications tend to be the same over and over again. We have a customer that's running 2,000 virtual machines, but since the images are the same over and over again, they're using thin cloning technology to basically create those incremental virtual machines instantly and free. So instead of having 2,000 copies of the operating system, they have a mere fraction of the physical storage required. We did a demo last week at VMworld, and we provisioned virtual desktops, 5,000 of them in less than 20 minutes. And the total storage consumed was only modestly larger than the single desktop image that the other clones were created from. So there are more technologies. One of them that doesn't drive utilization but is also very important is double parity RAID. Some vendors will call that RAID 6, NetApp will call it RAID DP. But that allows your infrastructure to be tolerant of 2 drives failing instead of just 1. And the impact of that is it allows you to use cheaper, denser serial ATA drives where you historically deployed enterprise class drives. So those serial ATA drives have twice the density. So you can actually meet your capacity requirements with half the drives and half the power. Similarly, the price per byte is dramatically lower. So the ability to nullify the reliability differential of these cheaper drives at the system level allows you to deploy much less expensive infrastructure to a much wider variety of applications. And there are others on the chart. But it's not just about the features. And as all this technology is interesting, but if you can't use it, if you can't integrate it into your business processes, if you can't make it 404 compliant, then it's going to be hard to really maximize your utility from this stuff. And that brings me to the other key thing that we demoed a year ago that was very popular, Snap Manager for Oracle. Allows you tools that DBAs use every single day to provision storage, to backup storage, to generate clones. So the ability to tie all of this together in a very useful fashion, so it can be automated, it can be compliant, and it can be integrated into workflows we use every day, is also key to these technologies. And the key punchline on this slide, or the summary, is that we talked a lot about acquisition costs. But the cheapest storage to manage and the cheapest storage to administer is the storage that you don't have to buy. So in full disclosure, NetApp is not the only company that has these technologies. Other vendors have some of these technologies on some of their platforms. But NetApp has the broadest portfolio of these offerings that are in wide use today and are available on all of our platforms, from the high end to the low end, and whether they be SAN or whether they be NAS. The other thing with these technologies is that results will vary. I talked about VM environments where it's not uncommon to see 80% reduction. In file services and databases, typically you will see less than that. And in compressed video, a lot less than that. But nonetheless, despite the caveats, these applications are being used in mission-critical environments by major companies to create competitive advantage for themselves every single day. So let me put it all together and talk about what customers have achieved when they bring all of these technologies together at once. I want to talk about British Telecom. So this is a server virtualization advantage, but the value is still the same. So they embarked on a major server virtualization project and actually reduced the amount of physical servers from over 3,000 to 134. At the same time, they decided to re-architect their storage as well, utilizing all of the technologies I talked about today, and actually raised their utilization from 25% to 70%, and saw similarly dramatic reductions of cost on the storage side as well. From an operation perspective, $2 million a year in power, 660 racks they eliminated. In their case, that was an entire data center that they saved, and had a cash ROI in 8 months. And the other thing is, despite dramatically reducing the cost of their infrastructure, they actually improved the service levels they were delivering to their customers. They were more responsive, they were more reliable, and they fundamentally changed the business model by which they engage with their internal customers and also their revenue-generating external customers. So just kind of get a sense as to what this actually looked like. So the flatbed on the left was one of two that took stuff out, and on the right is what they replaced it with. So this is what virtualization looks like. And the key learning here is that server virtualization, as powerful as it is no panacea. As much as it helps in some dimensions, it actually makes other situations, particularly backup, more complicated. And in order to really realize the benefits on the previous page, and to not dilute them, or basically create problems for yourself that you didn't have before you started, the real message here is think about server virtualization projects as a clean sheet of paper, not only about servers, but about storage and networking as well. So I also want to come back to Oracle. So Oracle, as I talked about, has achieved 90% utilization across an infrastructure and across all classes of applications, and 700 physical machines. So this technology is deployed in Oracle Global IT across their mission-critical business applications. There's Oracle On Demand. So Oracle On Demand is a hosting service that Oracle provides, and they run the Oracle instances for over 400 customers. That infrastructure all runs on NetApp and is over 3 petabytes or 3,000 terabytes of storage. Oracle University is a major adopter of thin clone technology. And what they found is that by using thin clones, they can actually run more classes because they did not have to replicate the database over and over and over again. The net result is that they tripled the amount of classes that they offered. They generated $80 million more of revenue to the company, all on the same infrastructure they had before thin clones. And then application development. So application development are aggressive users of all of this technology and early adopters. In fact, they help us develop this technology so it will be particularly well suited for the environment of their development organization and that of their customers. And they've actually achieved well over 100% utilization over an infrastructure that spans 3 petabytes. The other thing that Oracle did, which is not driven by utilization, is that they also used our ADP technology to deploy SATA more widely, serial ATA drives, those cheaper, denser drives that I talked about, for more of their applications. So not only did their utilization go up, but the underlying infrastructure they left behind was actually cheaper and more efficient to run. So the point is that there's innovation around storage, and it's real, and customers are using it every day. But as I talked about earlier, as with many major innovations and many technological breakthroughs, these are not being pioneered and they're not being promoted by the traditional incumbents. And if you follow this industry, they'll trot out the usual canards. This stuff doesn't work. It's not ready for mission-critical applications. The performance is bad. As I'm hoping is the customer examples that you saw today will dispel those myths. People are indeed using this, and they're using it to tremendous advantage. Now, I'd add that the naysayers have been wrong before. If you go back before 2001, when people referred to enterprise storage, they referred to the big refrigerator boxes called monolithic or frame-away storage. And there was really only 3 vendors. In fact, so certain of the unassailability of their market position, the CEO of one of those firms famously said in 2001 that storage was recession-proof. And the rationale was simple. Data grows, and there's nothing you can do about it. It has to be stored on enterprise storage, and I'm the market leader. But that's not the way it played out. In fact, what happened was IT managers were told, that's great that your data is growing, but you need to solve it within the constraints of this new budget reality. And as a result, customers were forced to deploy solutions in environments where they had previously not considered them. And their first-hand experience dispelled those myths. And the market changed forever. In fact, if you look at the market share change, the pivot point was in 2001, between where people moved away from solely monolithic storage for enterprise applications and more broadly deployed modular offerings. And no new innovation, or no immediate innovation drove this. And no great marketing logo made this happen. In fact, almost every marketing dollar being spent at this time was fighting this trend. But in the end, economics prevailed. Customers were forced to use this technology, and once they experienced firsthand, the myths and the canards that were put up against it were dispelled. So I'm not here to say that it's as bad today as it was in 2001. But I think in some industries it clearly is. Certainly financial services and housing and automobiles. And I think for almost everybody in this room, budgets are tighter today than they were 2 years ago or 3 years ago. But as in 2001, there is indeed proven innovation that can make a significant difference. And also as in 2001, most of that innovation is not coming and is not recommended by the traditional incumbents that are in all of our data centers today. So NetApp is one vendor offering those solutions. And there are others. You'll see startups out there offering innovation here as well. And then unusual sources of technology. People building application-specific storage appliances for particular markets. The point is that there's a new wave of storage innovation on the way. And its adoption is going to be accelerated by the economic pressures that we all face. So IT budgets are clearly strained today. And I'm here to say that there's significant relief available. So if that is indeed interesting to you, please visit our booth. In addition, we're going to have a number of breakout sessions where we're going to have customers talking firsthand about their experiences using this technology. So thank you to Oracle for inviting me today, and thank all of you for your time and attention. And have a great Oracle Open World.